Now, some say a weed is just a misplaced flower. I happen to be one of those folks who subscribe to this definition. A weed is just a misplaced flower. I also happen to be one of many who want to weed out every square inch of God's green earth, weeding especially those obnoxious vines that twist and turn around every other plant in their path. You got me thinking, seriously, doesn't it seem to be a human urge to weed out the unwanted, the undesirable, the uninvited, the unwelcomed plants and people alike? Those we might say are scary, offensive, or not just like us. Today, again, for the second week, Jesus is having us outstanding in the field. The gospel account begins as Jesus tells a parable of two sowers. One, the landowner who sows good seed to grow wheat, and one, the landowner describes as an enemy who in the dark night sows bad seeds, weeds among the wheat. And following this parable, several verses after, is an explanation given to the disciples in private. Both the parable and that explanation speak to the persistence of evil in this world and the infinite wisdom of God. Each separates differently, though, suggesting various meanings. So the parable begins with the telling of the landowner whose servants planted the field with good seed. And while all were sleeping, an unwanted enemy scatters bad seeds to grow weeds. And these are no ordinary weeds. Older biblical translations call it tare. Zizania in the Greek. The tare, T-A-R-E, a very poisonous weed that resembles wheat in the early stages. Eaten by a person or an animal, nausea, convulsions, even death might occur. This parable describes a very serious situation. Scattering this seed was a spiteful act of malice with no gain except to ruin the crop and endanger the food source. So the plants come up and begin to ripen, and the servants can see seeds growing among the wheat, so they act, first seeking an explanation from the landowner and even suggesting fault. Didn't the landowner use good seed? No, it's not the seed. It is the work of a sneaky enemy, an angry employee, a competitor, a terrorist, a crazy person, the devil incarnate. We don't know, not in the parable. Apparently the landowner does. And the landowner appears to react quite strangely to conventional wisdom. Actually, the landowner really doesn't react at all to a very serious and vicious act. No revenge, no retaliatory acts, no accusation, no policy, no lynching, no bad-mouthing, no lawsuit, no arrest. So the servants ask, how then do we restore the land? Conventional wisdom would say to get the weeds out before they grow strong and wrap around and choke the wheat, the sooner the better. But the owner says no, it's too risky. The wheat might suffer greater damage by having the roots dug up than to compete with the weeds for nourishment in the fields. But at harvest time, when the crop is mature, it will be winnowed, separated, the weeds thrown out into the fire, and the wheat gathered into the barn. The parable ends here. Parables are most often left to stand for themselves as an invitation to all who hear, an invitation to sit with the parable, to wrestle with it and its complications, and they can be complicated. as the parable's meaning opens and reveals itself to each and to all of us, now, today, at different times of our lives, and in the life of the world. And the parable calls us to ponder its message as the miracle of God's wisdom settles into our hearts. No explanation, no theological discourse or commentary. It's just a simple story about planting time at a large estate and an evil interloper causing great harm. It is a teaching left to grow in the creativity of our thoughts, hearts, our needs, and prayer. But the explanation given later in today's gospel leaves us with a different experience, doesn't it? Because it tells us what every element of the parable represents. Let's listen again. I've brought a contemporary version that names it the parable of the wheat and the thistles. Jesus dismissed the congregation and went into the house. The disciples came in and said, "Explain to us the story of the thistles in the field." So Jesus explained, "The farmer who sows the pure seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The pure seeds are subjects of the kingdom. The thistles are subjects of the devil. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is at the end of the age." I like this. The curtain of history. And the harvest hands are angels. The picture of thistles pulled up and burned is a scene from the final act. The Son of Man will send his angels, weed out the thistles from his kingdom, pitch them in the trash, and be done with them. They are going to complain to high heaven, but nobody is going to listen. At the same time, ripe, holy lives will mature and adorn the kingdom of God. Are you listening? Really listening? As I said, this explanation gives a precise definition to the story and its message. And among us, and many among us, prefer stories without unresolved endings or ambiguity of any kind. Who doesn't like tying up loose ends to make a story, biblical or otherwise, into a neater package? Making it neat as it can be. And there are good teachings within this explanation, like, God is omnipotent. Our God is an awesome God and knows all things, present, past, and yet to come. And another, God, the Spirit of Jesus, is at work in the world. And yes, we struggle with good and evil. There is evil in this world and in this life until the end of the age, when Christ will return to judge the living and the dead. Yet this explanation raises some real thorny issues, like creating a spirit of disunity. The us and them. The mentality, a dualism, a division between the good people of God and the evil people of the devil. And never the twain shall meet. And this is not what Christians are about. Further, the explanation implies our destinies are fixed from beginning to the end. And leaves us asking, well, where's Christ's salvation? And that will never do. So I'd say this explanation gives us food for thought indeed. Yet it is the parable, Jesus' preferred method of preaching, that offers us an infinite measure of grace and wisdom. For me, this parable suggests that the conventional wisdom of this world might just fall short and miss the mark at times, that our creative way of thinking things, worldly wisdom, and the wisdom of God can be different, even at times at odds. Or another way of saying it, my thoughts are not God's thoughts. How differently the servants look at the situation. They're going to rout out those nasty, hateful weeds at the risk of the wheat. But the landowner says no. The wheat and the weeds will grow together until the harvest. That wheat will survive. Yet does this mean that you and I can just sit still and look pretty and do nothing? No. Instead, the parable tells me that when tough times arise, take pause, seek the wisdom of the Lord. That is neither jump into action or sit on it, but take a middle road, and in between time to pause, to ponder, reflect, and pray. And most essentially, pray, welcoming God in, and trust. Trust God, the good prevails. It seems these chaotic days we all could do a little sitting with the mystery and wisdom of God, to nurture and care, to reset if need be, to settle and reorient and inform our mind, our spirit, our moral compass, to get in line with God's sacred wisdom, and then to go forth and with words and actions preach the gospel. Preach the gospel of the healing love to a world sore in need. And trust God who knows and tends to the fields of our lives, our families, strangers, friends, and foes alike, to bring peace, healing, and prosperity to us all.